We have the International Space Station, which is, started in 2000, was built by the space shuttles, and then we went back with Soyuz, we went back with Dragon capsules, and one of my favorite things about this mission is when the astronauts in orbit around the moon talk to, or in flying past the far side of the moon, not quite in orbit, talk to the astronauts on the International Space Station. I don't believe that has happened before with two astronauts and two crews of astronauts in very different places. Maybe it has because when the shuttle went up to, say, launch space satellites and things like that, they didn't go to the same orbit as the International Space Station. But still, from that long of a distance, definitely hasn't happened before.
Wow, and as we watch these helicopters and these boats get closer and closer to the capsule, let's listen into NASA here for just a bit.
Down. Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling now waiting for the life raft, the front porch, to be erected along the side of the vehicle so that the hatch can be opened and the crew members extracted from integrity, soon to be hoisted one by one into a pair of Navy helicopters for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. If you missed it earlier, we talked to Flight Dynamics and received a more official touchdown time or splashdown time, as it were, of 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Pacific Time. That would equate to a mission elapsed time of 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 15 seconds.
And this is a mission that has been such a long time in the making. Even those boats, those fast boats that are approaching the capsule and waiting to make first contact with those astronauts. I want to bring in Liz Kreutz. She's in San Diego. She's been monitoring all this, and she's been talking to some of those service members who have been preparing for this day. Liz, if you can hear me, what does that preparation look like?
Yeah, hey, Gotti, we had a chance to talk to the Navy colonel from the Marines who is organizing this entire recovery mission that we're watching right now. And it was just amazing to hear from him the preparation, no surprise, that went into this. Well over a year of training meticulously every single part of this recovery. They said that even just recently, for 2 different times for full weeks, the team that we're watching right now, this dive team, went out with NASA far off the coast of San Diego and simulated exactly what we're watching right now over and over again with an Orion capsule to the point where they basically could do this in their sleep. These are the best of the best, and they were saying really it's only the Navy, the U.S. Navy, that can do something like this. And it's no coincidence that San Diego is the place they chose. Of course, as Tom mentioned, it is a beautiful day. It is classic sunny San Diego weather, which is perfect and much needed. But it's also really about this incredible collaboration between the Navy and NASA that's evolved, and they work together in tandem to what we're witnessing right now. And it's hard because the sun is just this way, so it's a little bright, but right here across the way where we are is Coronado. This is the Navy base, and this is where after they are hoisted onto the recovery ship and they are evaluated medically, this is right here where they are going to be brought in those helicopters. And then from here, if they want to spend the night here, they can. We wish they would, but it sounds like they want to get home to their families and most likely are going to fly home from here to the Johnson Space Center tonight, Gotti.
Yeah, very, very understandable, and unclear what we're seeing there, but it looks like there might be a flare or something that is giving some signal or some smoke off in the water. I'm not sure if we have Tom Costello, but Tom, what is this? What is this smoke coming from the ocean?
You know, I can't answer that, buddy. I think it's probably just a flare for wind direction for the choppers and the crews. But I'm a novice, and I don't profess to have any naval expertise at all. I did want to tell you, however, that NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman tweeted out a short time ago, "Splashdown, America, stand by." Let's listen.
From the imagery assets out at sea in the Pacific of integrity, we continue to get good reports from the landing and support officer, who's in contact with the recovery team, that the crew is in excellent shape, no issues. They're just currently biding their time, waiting for the front porch to be erected. We have no hazardous We have no hazard gases and no hazardous situation with the vehicle. It performed perfectly all the way down from entry interface to its splashdown in the Pacific at 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time.
All right, the front
And
porch
as you
they're
can
talking
see,
about is
the
inflatable.
first phalanx of recovery personnel now pulling up alongside of Integrity.
I was going to say the front porch is quite literally an inflatable collar that they will put around that ship, around the capsule rather, and then bring the astronauts out onto that collar, out onto that front porch as they call it. Can I finish the tweet from Jared Isaacman, the NASA administrator, saying America is back in the business of sending astronauts to the moon and bringing them home safely. Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy did an outstanding job. These talented astronauts inspired the world and represented their space agencies and the nations as humanity's ambassadors to the stars, and reiterating that this is a test mission as they hope to return astronauts to the moon as soon as 2028.
Now we are seeing that boat filled with service members
At this hour,
make its way to the capsule.
The vehicle has been powered down. There's no hazardous gas emanating from the vehicle. That's why the first team of recovery personnel has been able to pull alongside Integrity. And the reports continue to come in that the 4 astronauts are in excellent shape.
Gotti, it's probably worth making the point. These guys have practiced for this, as Liz Kreutz has mentioned. They practiced for this not just for weeks, but for years, because they were also involved in the Artemis I recovery. And this is a very complicated mission. And to approach that ship, and in the event that there were any hazards, to know how to handle that. And of course, you're on an ocean, so all of that is not something you just jump into the fast boat and run out there. They practiced and practiced and practiced all of the procedures, including if one of the astronauts were in the middle of a medical emergency, how to expedite help to him or her. But again, everything has gone perfectly.
And Tom, do we know who's coming out first? I read earlier it was Christina out first, then Victor, then Jeremy, and then Reed last?
I know Reed is last. I know Christina is first. And I'm sorry, I don't have my cheat sheet on that particular. You would, of course, ask me that question. I don't have my cheat sheet on that issue. But the commander is coming out last. I know that. And they're going to be hoisted one up to one chopper, then another to another chopper, and then again a third to the first chopper and a fourth to the second chopper.
And the medical evaluations, those come next, right? When do they get a little bit of time to finally take it all in? Yeah,
well, I think a quick corpsman paramedic type evaluation right there at the ship, which is I think probably going to be, how you feeling? You okay? You want to come out? And then, let's listen for a second.
Brought out of the spacecraft onto a large inflatable raft just a short time from now. In the meantime, we can go back to the USS John P. Murtha, where my colleague Megan Cruz is standing by to provide her situation report. Megan, can you hear us?
This is NASA TV we're listening to.
Hey, Rob, yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Yeah, we're back here on the bow of the recovery ship where there's still plenty of people peering out into the water. We are not very far from the action everyone is seeing on their screen now. The Orion spacecraft, Integrity, in the ocean, surrounded by a number of recovery boats. As Rob has been saying,
To answer your question about on the ship, they have a full medical suite staffed by led by an emergency room doctor, a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and he has got a full suite of personnel there to treat anything that might have developed. But he was expecting, and we interviewed him in a pool interview, he was expecting there to be really nothing of any serious nature. But they'll do a quick evaluation on the ship and then put them on helicopters to San Diego.
In the water right now on those boats.
It looks like they're getting very, very close to the hatch there. And as you can see, there's not very much room on that Zodiac there. But Tom, you were talking about a front porch being assembled, right? An inflatable front porch that'll be used to bring those astronauts out.
Yeah, it's coming. And I think that's what you're looking at first. They got to essentially wrap a collar, an inflatable collar around Orion, also known as Integrity. The crew named it Integrity. And then once that's inflated, then they will slowly bring the astronauts out onto what they refer to as the front porch. But it's the inflatable collar around the space capsule.
And the stabilization collar. You might also hear it referred to
We've got astronaut Stephen Robinson with us here in the studio. They're bobbing in the ocean now. Gravity's doing its thing. Are they still strapped into their seats, or are they allowed to unbuckle and assume a more comfortable gravitational position?
Well, that brings us to those orange balloons you see there. And what they're there for is if there were large waves that tipped it over sideways, or it's actually stable upside down in the water. And it could have bounced and landed that way. And so now it can't tip over. And so it may be that they're able to unstrap and kind of relax their limbs a little bit. But, they're feeling gravity for the first time in 10 days. They're bobbing around in the ocean. It's very obvious they're on planet Earth again, and I'm sure they're really looking forward to that hatch getting open. And they're going to see somebody other than each other, for the first time in 10 days.
It is interesting, and yet, time is moving very slowly for us. Very anxious to see them, right?
Yes.
In that capsule, is time moving quickly?
No, they're ready for the hatch to be open. They're ready to get out, and now that they've gone through all that, and you get pretty darn, focused and keyed up in your brain as it's working at 112% as you go through all the events of entry. And now they can relax. I mean, really, their job is just about done.
Looks like they've got something open there, if I'm not mistaken.
What's shining in the sun there?
Something shining in the sun. Let's take a listen. Take a listen to NASA TV here.
There is a mission audio loop here on the ship. And it was just reported out that the side hatch is open. Side hatch of Integrity is open. You're getting these beautiful shots from our aerial assets. The ship itself, where I'm on, just 3,000 yards away. Again, plenty of people on the boat here, glued to the side closest to where they can see all this action. And again, with just 3,000 yards separating us, great views from the bow here. You can see now that side hatch is open. One of the Navy personnel is about to get inside there.
Going in. So before they come out, somebody goes in.
Yes.
So there'll be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but...
Wow. Four of the medics will go in.
Of recovery personnel, with each astronaut assessing them.
After all the training of the Navy personnel, think how exciting it is for them to actually do this and to be the first to shake the hands of the crew.
Yeah, first human hands on touching that spacecraft after it's been surrounded by plasma must be something too.
Yes. And you see this thing come out of the sky, looks blistering out of the sky, trailing a big trail of flame, hits the water, open the hatch. There's humans inside.
Yeah, there's humans inside, and there are more humans racing towards them.
The divers that will go in to the spacecraft to check on each of the astronauts. These other boats will begin doing a number of things, putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion, building that front porch. Eventually they will retrieve the parachutes, as well as tow Orion back to the well deck of the recovery ship here. personnel to get their assessment of the crew inside of Orion. Why don't we toss it back to Rob for an update?
Yes, thank you, Megan. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Rick Henfling and the entry team of flight controllers still on duty. The vehicle has been powered down for some time now. There are no hazardous gases emanating from integrity. That, of course, allowed the recovery personnel to approach the vehicle and then open the hatch to begin the initial medical assessment of the crew, as you just indicated. Now we're standing by for the erection of that inflatable raft, the front porch, alongside of the vehicle that will enable the crew to be extracted one by one onto the raft, have a moment or two to get their land legs back before they're hoisted into two hovering Navy helicopters, 2 crew members for each helicopter, for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. All of Integrity's systems operated flawlessly throughout the course of the approach to the Earth, the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of the key milestones that followed in this high-speed return to Earth for Integrity, a mission that spanned more than 694,000 miles from the vehicle's launch from the Kennedy Space Center atop the Space Launch System back.
Hey there, I'm Gotti Schwartz, and any second now, we are expecting to see a special recovery team extract the 4 Artemis astronauts from their spacecraft that splashed down in the Pacific Ocean just a little while ago. Let's listen into NASA television as they get a little bit closer to the capsule, and there are specialists on board now. It doesn't seem like there's any commentary coming down from the NASA Mission Control right now, but what you're seeing is service members from the Navy and specialists that are circling around the Artemis II Orion capsule that is now in the Pacific Ocean after making entry. That entry started in Earth's atmosphere somewhere above India and made its way all the way across the Pacific Ocean, coming down
as we mentioned, the
beautifully deployed
podcast,
parachutes to land in the Pacific Ocean now.
That
all systems inside have been powered down.
Splashdown in the Pacific was Apollo 17 back on December 19th, 1972. So for the first time in 53 and a half years, we have reenacted that with the arrival of Integrity's astronauts as they flew around the moon in that historic lunar flyby that began with a trans-lunar injection burn that took them out of Earth orbit following 24 hours of a high Earth orbit trajectory. The high Earth orbit trajectory enabled flight controllers here to have a full 24 hours to evaluate the systems on Integrity and the condition of the crew before they would commit to flying to the moon.
And it appears as though, as we're watching these live images, they are unfurling what I believe is going to be something called the front porch to allow those astronauts to come out to a platform and then be hoisted up into some awaiting Seahawk helicopters. If we have Tom Costello, Tom, what we're seeing being put into the water right now, is that to stabilize the capsule, or is that part of the inflatable front porch?
I don't know the answer to that, Gotti, but I'm looking at the same thing, and I'm noticing you've got divers in the water, as well as that what looks like a very long inflatable tube. So I think that may be the collar. It looks like they're swimming it over to the ship, if I had to guess, and I only say that based on having read and watched all of the exercises over the last few weeks. You know, I had a quick question for Steve, though. I mean, these astronauts have been locked shoulder to shoulder for 10 days, unable to shower, no real privacy when it comes to, using the facilities, of course. And I'm just wondering what they must feel like. Are they all just desperate to breathe fresh air, to take a shower, to get, brush their teeth? I'm wondering, what is it like to be locked in shoulder to shoulder with they may be your best friends, but after 10 days, you're like, okay, enough already. I'm wondering, Steve's kind of lived through that. Steve, what's it like?
Well, they're either more of your best friends or you just can't wait to get away from them, No, generally, this is what you sign up for, and these folks have been in astronaut training a long time. They've been in the military for the most part before that. They've got 3 out of the 4 of them have experience in space already. This is part of what you sign up for, and to tell you the truth, it kind of sounds bad when you describe it that way, but it's part of the adventure. It's part of the mission, part of the thing that you share together is these close quarters, pretty austere conditions, and the people who do well in the astronaut business are the people who think that's fun.
But the other thing, Steve, that strikes me, having interviewed so many of you astronauts over the last 22 years with NBC News, is how all of you seem so mild-mannered. That's not to say that you don't know how to put the metal down when it needs to be put down, but you are all thoughtful, and I don't think I've ever met one who came off as ill-tempered. Everybody seems to be awfully balanced and easygoing.
That's because we're trained in Tom Costello classes to act like that around you.
I'm not sure which class that is, Steve, but by the way, can we mention Steve as Professor Steve Robinson at UC Davis? I've often said I should be taking his classes because he's very good at explaining detailed physics to a layman.
Alongside the spacecraft for
it sounds like we're getting an update on what's about to be inflated here.
My colleague Megan Cruz conducted on the USS John P. Murtha with Navy diver First Class David McMahon that explains how this process is unfolding.
Okay, Davey, so you and some of your team, one last look over of the stabilization collar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is this stabilization collar?
This is what's going to stabilize the capsule out there in the ocean. We don't know how good the weather or the waves will be that day, so this will help prevent any unnecessary occurrences from happening, stabilizing the capsule and the astronauts inside.
So basically this is a float that will go around Orion. I'm assuming that what they're doing right now, these are the lines that will attach the collar onto Orion?
That is correct.
And so what are they doing here?
So we've got the lower line that will secure the inflation device before we inflate it. That gives us the go-ahead that it's secure and in space, and then we'll inflate it, and then once that is done, we'll undo all the carabiners and get this orange line on top tied in the same fashion, and then this will be secured to the capsule, and the astronauts can safely take their first steps out of the capsule onto the front porch.
Okay, and how long will it take them to set up the stabilization collar?
We should definitely be able to handle this in under 10 minutes.
Okay, wow. And then you just mentioned the front porch. So basically after they set up the stabilization collar, then they set up what's called the front porch here.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the front porch?
Front porch is basically a bigger waiting room for the astronauts to sit in while we wait for the helicopters to show up and grab them.
Okay, so the medical team that was inside with the crew, they're going to help them out and onto the front porch?
That is correct.
And then what happens here?
We have hired trained medical personnel also on board the front porch that will give them lookovers and just make sure they're okay while we wait for the helicopters to show up.
Okay. How does it feel, I mean, your team, you, to be part of a mission that's returning astronauts from the moon in more than 50 years?
We all feel extremely honored to be a part of this, as well as a bigger mission for the Navy and joining up with NASA to do great things.
And do you feel like you and your team are ready?
Yes, very ready.
Cool. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You learn something new every day, Tom. I did not know that. I mean, it looks like one of those lifesavers, one of those things that you see at the beach that are thrown in, but large enough to stabilize an entire capsule. So that eventually will be inflated all around, and then that will be what gives it stability. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what a great description and an explainer by that NASA TV reporter who's providing it on NASA television. Continue to listen.
Control room to receive congratulations from Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling, but we're going to stick with our operations out of the Pacific as we await the extraction of the 4 crew members who are reported to be in excellent condition.
Gotti, I would just tell you, President Trump on Truth Social a short time ago said congratulations to the great and very talented crew of Artemis II. The entire trip was spectacular. The landing was perfect. And as President of the United States, I cannot be more proud. I look forward to seeing you all at the White House soon. We'll be doing it again. And then, next step, Mars, President Trump.
To be erected alongside of the side hatch of the vehicle.
And as we wait for that collar to be put into the water and inflated, I do want to bring in space medicine researcher Dr. Farhan Asrar right now. So, Doctor, can you walk us through what are the first checks? What are the first physical checks that the crew will be given, and what are the immediate effects on the human body for, they weren't up there for too long, but 9-10 days in zero gravity, that's a very different environment than where they find themselves now, yeah?
Exactly. So, I mean, it has short duration, but there does involve a bit of like muscle wasting. So they may be feeling a bit weak as well. Could it impact their basically walking abilities? Initially, all astronauts do feel a bit of dizziness and lightheadedness. So the immediate assessment is basically their vitals. So they will be looking at their blood pressure, their oxygen, their breathing, heart rate. And then immediately after that is just more of the neurological as well as their balance itself, their ability to stand and walk is something that they'll be looking at. And if anyone might be experiencing any kind of difficulty, whether that's breathing or anything else, then it's really kind of catering to it. And then during each and every step, so exactly how they said that they bring them to the front porch, that assessment is ongoing. Once they move in, even to the helicopter and then the next facility, they'll keep checking them just to see how they're doing and are things improving as they would expect, or basically they need any further assessment or assistance. And then beyond that, it's just kind of preparing them for the rehabilitation phase once they hit Johnson.
Doctor, thank you so much. And Tom Costello, if you're still with us, I saw some sort of tether that was attached and drawn out by one of those boats. What are you seeing there?
Just listening also to the NASA comms, there are internal radio loops that we're not privy to, but there's some discussion that the waves may be giving them a little bit of a difficulty in getting that collar in place, which is interesting because the waves don't look significant at all to us, right, as lay persons.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been surfing out there, and that would definitely make me sick if I'm sitting on my board for too long. But
so that may be what's holding this up. I mean, they've been in the water now for more than an hour. And listen, let's be clear. NASA is very deliberate, I mean to say, and they follow the procedures item by item by item to make sure they don't miss a step. Mm-hmm. They're very methodical. And Tom, looks like they're trying to get him on the collar. I see Navy divers in the water now with that collar.
That might have been what we saw. We saw them holding on, and then I think there was some drifting, and I could see the waves kind of carrying some of those divers away. That'd be pretty hard to kick against. But hopefully they'll be able to get it in position here. Tom, as we're watching this capsule in seawater, I mean, it is now gone from the far side of the moon to this vacuum of space. Now it's in seawater, which is not great for electronics, and obviously the electronics are inside. But is any of this reusable?
Well, the spaceship itself is not reusable. As for I've not heard, and I spent the last week at Houston, at NASA in Houston, and before that at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, I've not heard anybody discussing that anything within Orion itself could be reusable. I can't be absolutely 100% sure that there's not some piece of telemetry, but I think it's not necessarily going to be reusable. But they are building, of course, on what they've learned from Artemis I, Artemis II, and then Artemis III would be next year, and orbit around the Earth, not the moon, to test docking procedures. One challenge with that, and again, I was just at Houston, just in the mock-up room where they have vehicles that they are testing. One challenge is they don't yet have a usable lunar lander, right? They have, and you've heard, NASA has kind of really put the onus on SpaceX and on Blue Origin, owned by Jeff Bezos, to get them a lunar lander that can take astronauts down to the lunar surface. And until that's ready, we simply can't land on the moon. So they do need to practice docking procedures with whichever vehicle that might be, and do that in space, and do that around Earth. Let's listen for a second here.
Capsule with the crew. He is reporting all 4 members are green. All of our 4 astronauts, Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, green, meaning they are feeling great. Not the complexion of their skin. They are feeling great, happy to be home, and ready to be extracted as soon as possible.
Well, I would be green at this point.
Yeah, I would be green. I would be green in those waves. Yeah, that is a lot of rocking back and forth. But Tom, you bring up such a good point about what is to come in the future with the HLS. We do have Drew Feustel with us as well, NASA astronaut. He's with doing some incredible stuff right now with VAST. They're building the next generation of space station. And if there was anybody, and Drew, I hate to put you on the spot, but if there was anybody that might have an inside loop as to, I don't know, how the HLS development is going in SpaceX and Blue Origin, maybe it's you. What can you tell us?
Well, I think we all have a lot of the same information about how things are going. We're watching the tests down in Boca Chica with the Starship, and we know that Blue Origin lander has gone through some thermovac testing as well. So, those companies are definitely marching along, and they want to succeed because we clearly had, NASA has tasked them and awarded them contracts to make this happen. We know SpaceX hasn't slowed down in the past, and they'll keep moving forward to try to find success, and I think Blue will as well. And I think it's also important if we could, create some competition in the space for landers, so that we have, assured access to that, the surface of the moon, and potentially, creating the ability to put habitats up and build infrastructure to allow us to stay on the moon indefinitely. I mean, that's the whole point. But it seems like they're working hard, but none of this is trivial. We haven't been around the moon in 52, 53 years, and so it takes a lot of effort and a lot of ingenuity and a lot of talent. This mission was pulled off perfectly, which is amazing, and it's a testament to the work that NASA does. And we'll continue to work with the contractors to create opportunities for us to get back to this surface of the moon.
And Drew, as we watch this capsule bobbing here in the Pacific Ocean, I mean, it reminds me of Crew Dragon, and it reminds me of watching Crew Dragon get lassoed in, and the dolphins coming down to greet Crew Dragon and SpaceX. And when we're talking about what we may see next year, and I don't want to diminish what's happening here, so let's leave this picture up. But if we could put maybe a smaller picture alongside, if we have any of the mock-ups of what Blue Origin is hoping to build and what SpaceX is hoping to build to land on the lunar surface, would love to have a little bit of that discussion, because that's where we go next, right? We're talking about massive systems. There they are. That's the Starship HLS, and that's Blue Origin's Blue Moon. Two very different concepts. But both of those, as you can see, are very, very different than the capsule that you're seeing bobbing up and down. And Stephen, if I could come to you, Artemis III, the next thing that we are going to see is some sort of coupling, some sort of interface between the pieces that we right now see in the ocean with those images that we have not seen publicly, right?
That's right. The next capsule that will be become our Artemis III, the next Orion capsule, has docking mechanism built into it. This capsule does not have that. And then its mission will be to test the operations of one or both landers, not too sure which yet, and docking will be part of it, but you realize those landers have to support human life too. So the whole life support system, the navigation system, the communication system, all of that has to be checked out and can be checked out in low Earth orbit before you go shipping way off to the moon. It makes a ton of sense to do this.
Wow. And it looks like they've got part of the ring that is starting to be inflated there. If we can take a closer shot, yep, there it is. So you're starting to see that collar, and it's definitely stabilizing the capsule just a little bit. Tom, if we have you, it looks like some of the divers are on the platform, others are underneath. It did quite a bit of securing.
Yeah, and it looks like they do have the hatch open, right? So at least they're getting some fresh air in there, which I'm sure they're all excited about. By the way, in answer to your question, the one and only, our great space and aviation producer, Jay Blackman, has already looked up the answer on how much, if anything, out of Orion might be reusable. And the answer is that on early flights, high-value crew module components like avionics and environmental control and life support systems will be reused, with plans to reuse more components in later missions. So they will, sounds like they will start to take some pieces off of Orion that have worked well and apply them to the next Orion.
And Emily, if I could bring you back in here, reusability is such a big, it's such a big topic of conversation. We see the SLS, and we see the boosters all the way up to the capsule itself. So much of that will either disintegrate in the Earth's atmosphere or be discarded and never used again. And yet the systems, the competing systems that we see, they're banking on reusability. How do you see all of this eventually reconciling and merging?
Yeah, there's different aspects of reusability, I think, for different sections of the mission. So if there's like the rocket aspect of it. So when the rockets come back down and land on the platform of SpaceX, like then you don't have to create a new rocket to put fuel into. You can reuse it. For this, where it's the crew capsule and things like that, like Tom said, the systems inside, if you can take those out and use them again, great. That probably saves you a little bit of money too. I think it's also important to note that like this capsule will be used. It won't be maybe reused in space, but it will be studied. It'll be they'll look at it to see how well the heat shield did. They'll look at other parts of it to make sure that everything held up, to see what stayed within specs, what might have gone out of spec. And then they're going to use that data. They'll use it to test in different on-the-ground systems and things like that in order to prepare for making the capsules for the next several missions that much better, that much stronger, that much more reliable.
No, and on behalf of everybody here in Los Angeles, California Science Center could definitely make some room for an exquisite piece.
I wonder where it's going to go. I wonder if the astronauts are already looking forward to visiting it somewhere.
Called dibs. Yeah, but we would like to put in dibs. And it looks like they've got another one of those callers floating by. That may be the front porch. But it may be some time before we see those astronauts. We'll be monitoring for that. But I do want to peer a little further into the future. We are joined by the one and only Michio Kaku, who I believe is watching all of this with us. He is a renowned theoretical physicist. He has written so much about the future, and one of my favorite people to talk about when we're thinking about where humans can go next. Michio, how do you define the success of Artemis II that we're seeing here?
Well, I think we have to put it in context. Back in the 1960s, we went to the moon, we explored outer space, and then we went home and forgot about it. As Isaac Asimov once wrote, it's like a football game. We scored the touchdown, and then we took our football and went home and forgot about it. Well, 50 years later, we're now reviving the dream. A dream with more advanced technology. Rockets are usable now. And we have television with all sorts of different kinds of cameras and angles that we didn't have back in the 60s when we started the arms race. And so we're talking about tremendous progress, even though for 50 years we didn't go into outer space to the moon or beyond. Now things are different. Prices have dropped. Rockets are reusable now. And I think it means that we can now begin to go back to not just the moon, but to Mars and perhaps even beyond. So a whole new chapter is being written right before our eyes.
Yeah, and you know, for those kids that went into the closet and we have now found our dad's football and we're like, wow, this is great. It's still a relatively familiar shape, if you will, when it comes to the SLS. I want to get your take. In the next 10 to 15 years, the methods of propulsion, rocketry, the reusability. You know, for a little while we were talking about space planes. We were talking about, you know, exotic forms of space propulsion, and there's talk of nuclear propulsion in space. Do you see, you know, the physics aren't going to change, but do you see the way we get around changing over the next decade in a meaningful way?
Well, when I was a child, Walt Disney had a book, Our Friend the Atom, and he had a beautiful picture of the atomic airplane. You have a jet airplane with a nuclear reactor on board. Well, back in those days, no one asked a simple question: what happens if the airplane crashes and all of a sudden you have all this uranium floating around? So now we're a lot wiser that we want to use nuclear, but in very, very specific ways, so we don't endanger the population. And we have to realize that, of course, it creates nuclear waste and things like that. So we've come a long ways. We've come a long ways from the 50s when we just dreamed of all these exotic forms of propulsion. Now we're serious. We're serious about the next step, which would be to build a permanent base on the moon. Think about that. Going to the moon, not just to have dinner and come back again and forget everything, but going to the moon and staying there and having astronauts live there for a while. So we're talking about a whole new era. And then after that, decades after that, we're talking about perhaps going to Mars and using the moon as a station by which we can launch ships all the way out to Mars. And with Mars, we're talking about a new home.
Those days are hopefully coming, but Dr. Kaku, I do want to listen in to NASA's stream here, because it appears as though those astronauts are about to make their way onto that front porch and stand for the first time in quite some time. Trying to see in the glare of the setting sun here on the West Coast, with that golden light hitting that incredible piece of human engineering and that floating raft. I thought for a second there that might be Christina, but it does not appear as though any of the astronauts have come out yet, and yet you see the hands reaching inside, and you see that support team that have been training for years for this moment, getting ready to steady those astronauts. And then they will put slings around them and they will lift them into the air via helicopter and take them to an awaiting ship. They will be medically cleared there. They will make their way to San Diego.
Behind me, a fairly
and then eventually Houston.
As hundreds of flight controllers have poured into the flight control room here. This is reminiscent of the scene after the final shuttle mission of STS-135, although that was the end of a program. This is only the beginning of a program with the textbook splashdown of integrity and its 4 astronauts. We're standing by for the crew to be extracted from the spacecraft. Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling invited all of these flight controllers who have contributed to this mission to enter the flight control room to have an opportunity to receive well wishes and to share the mutual glow that exists in the wake of a textbook mission for integrity on the front screen here in Mission Control. A sign that says, "Welcome home, Integrity," taking humanity back to the moon, going further, and returning safely to Earth. So all of that jubilation, part of the post-splashdown activities, even as we await the crew being extracted from the vehicle to be hoisted onto Navy helicopters for the trip back to the USS John P. Murtha.
I just sent Navius an email, and we're watching.
What a moment there in the Pacific Ocean. We're moments away from those astronauts emerging from what has been their home in zero gravity, in the vacuum of space for the last 9 days.
Mission Control. This view of the Artemis Flight Control Room, known as the White Flight Control Room. This is the old Shuttle Flight Control Room, and now is the home of Artemis missions to the moon and beyond. Once again, quite a few flight controllers were invited in by Entry Flight Director Rick Hentling to share in the jubilation following the successful splashdown of Integrity. That splashdown occurring an hour and 22 minutes ago, as we stand by for the completion of the extraction of the crew, and ultimately they're hoisting onto Navy helicopters for a short flight back to the USS John P. Murtha.
And I have the privilege of sitting next to Stephen Robinson here as we watch this, and I gotta say, you know, Stephen, you're sitting here. I can see in your eyes. You see that room. You know the history of that room, and to see everybody there once again as they gathered for the shuttle mission, the last shuttle mission. What goes through your mind?
These are humans. Humans did this. Humans working together. I worked 17 shuttle missions in that same room there, and with that very mission control as Capcom.
And the feeling of being at the center of the vortex of so much competence. I've never felt that anywhere else, and is just when you're an astronaut on the spacecraft, to know that they're there for you and with you gives you, you know, the courage and the confidence to go and do missions like this.
Let's take a listen in here. It looks like we've got our first astronaut out.
Should be Christina.
Yeah, it looks like it's Christina. Right as the sun is starting to set here.
That's a happy person.
What a picture-perfect moment.
We are expecting the other crew members momentarily to be extracted.
And there's the second.
We now have 2 crew members out.
And this is the cheering in Mission Control.
The cheers of Mission Control are echoing across the country right now. And Tom, if you're still with us, you were in Mission Control. I imagine the emotions are running so high there. We have Christina and I believe Victor
2 crew members out, 2 to go.
On the front porch.
Yeah, and let's just make the point to the audience that it's obviously the people in orange are the astronauts, right? So when you see the guys in orange, those are the astronauts. And the fact that Christina came out first is not an indication of any problems. That was the plan all along. Everything, as we said at NASA, is planned and down to the tiniest detail. I was just in Mission Control what day was it now? I lost track. Sunday. I was there on Sunday inside Mission Control. At any given time during this mission, there were
reported that all the crew members were feeling very well.
Yeah, they just said Reed Weissman will be the last out. Makes sense. The commander's the last out. When I was there on Sunday, they made the point that there are roughly 20 controllers on duty at any one time during a mission, and they work in 3 shifts 24/7. Third one's out. Look for the tallest one. That'd be Jeremy Hansen.
That's Jeremy, yep.
And then you'll have Commander Reed Weissman. And can we make the point, not to belabor it, but boy, is Canada proud. I mean, I watched yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, and I'm sorry, the days run together because the mission days get confused in my head. But when Jeremy Hansen did a talk back to kids across Canada, and this was all organized by the Canadian Space Agency, and they made sure they went to every province. And the kids were so sweet and asking, you know, they were all excited to meet their own homegrown hero and to hear his perceptions and his impressions of having been up there. It was really terrific. And then, of course, the conversation with the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, and the debate over, do you prefer Nutella or maple syrup on your pancakes? Because the Prime Minister saw some Nutella floating there in the capsule, and he said, please tell me it's not true. You prefer maple syrup, don't you? And they all said, of course, yes, sir. So that was good fun. And I've got some dear Canadian friends, some of whom have been texting me today, in fact, in the last hour, talking about how much fun this has been for them to watch.
My family is Canadian.
What a historic moment across the board. And I think Commander Mike Weissman is now out of the shuttle. You hear those cheers. Those 4 astronauts out of that incredible, incredible piece of NASA engineering that kept them alive over the last 9 days. And now they await the hoist from those helicopters that are circling above, I believe. They've got some slings there on the front porch. Let's listen into NASA streaming here.
2 Navy helicopters hovering overhead will begin shortly.
And the guy you're listening to there is Rob Navius from in Mission Control, Gotti. Rob told me just a couple of days ago, the first one will be hoisted up to Chopper 1, then the next one will go to Chopper 2. And then the third astronaut goes back to Chopper 1, the fourth will go to Chopper 2.
I cannot think of a more heroic exit than to be taken from a capsule and then hoisted up into a helicopter and then put on the deck of an awaiting ship. This is just such an astounding feat that we're seeing play out in front of us. And again, all of it happening, it's almost cinematic. If we didn't have the issues with the waves and getting the collar around, it almost seems too perfect. I mean, it is picturesque, that Southern California Hollywood light, just bathing all of them in that golden glow.
And obviously, Gotti, by the way, no quarantine. No quarantine. I did get an email question yesterday asking, will they be quarantined? No, that hasn't happened since the earliest Apollo days, when they just wanted to make sure that astronauts coming back from the moon weren't going to be carrying back moon germs, and they quickly realized, no, that wasn't a concern. So no, they're not quarantined, and as you can see, they're out in the rafts with the Navy divers and medical teams. So they'll be taken by chopper over to the ship and be evaluated.
The mission is over, but the melody lingers on.
Yeah, and they're sitting down. Stephen, are they sitting down because gravity's feeling a certain kind of way right now?
Yeah, you want to sit down.
For a short interview while the recovery operations continue out of the Pacific.
Let's listen into NASA here.
And then we'll turn it back over to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha.
Hey, Gotti, maybe it's worth making the point that we dip in and out of NASA TV, and because the world of media has changed so much in the last 50 years. They don't want every network and every YouTuber out on their ship, understandably. And so they put together this coverage, and it's honestly, I think they do an excellent job. And they've got their own NASA TV reporters on the ship doing an excellent job of conveying what's going on. Back in the late 1960s, of course, you may have had a network pool, if you will. You may have had a network correspondent out there, but anymore, I think there are just too many of us. So this seems to work pretty well.
Well, you know, for the next one, I am around to correspondent duties, coffee run duties, in the water, cleaning cleaning the scuba masks, whatever they need. I am there, and Tom, if you get a ticket, I will do all those things for you as well.
There is a CNN pool of the ship as well. I shouldn't have neglected that. We are getting a pool coming from CNN, so we kind of dip in and out. By the way, every network participates in the pool, and that's normal. And so we all are showing the same images. And then, of course, on top of that, we're getting NASA TV. That's why we're dipping in and out of various shots.
And there was a shot just a little while ago where I saw those two helicopters that continued to circle and circle again. But if I understand this correctly, there's going to be two recovery missions here, right? You see them circling there in the distance. You're going to see the helicopters hoisting those astronauts. And you're also going to see the capsule potentially hoisted as well, right?
It will not be hoisted. It will be dragged, if you will, pulled to the recovery ship. And then it literally slides up a ramp off the back end of the ship. And it's going to be immediately, and by the way, they're going to truck it, eventually truck it all the way to Florida, cross country. Hopefully they don't have an accident after they go 900,000 miles in space, or whatever, the 700,000 miles in space. Hopefully the I-10 eastbound is clear and open for them.
I was just gonna if it gets stuck in traffic on the 405 after going 24,000 miles an hour, that'll be something that only humans can pull off. And let's listen into NASA here. Just as I think we hear something interesting, it goes quiet as it often does. And I think we have Dr. Farhan Asar still with us. He is a space medicine researcher. Doctor, there have been so many incredible experiments that have been done during this particular trip. One that caught my attention was something that was called the Avatar, right? Where it was the use of bone marrow and these analogs for how they were feeling radiation, basically chips and human cells. Can you explain what was going on there?
Sure. I mean, this is humans going back to let's say deep space in more than 50 years. And we know that there is an increased level of radiation, as well as the type of radiation is also a lot more concerning and penetrating in deep space. So basically they have this chip-like container where they took these bone marrow samples, and it was basically being exposed to that radiation. And it is really kind of coming back, seeing what the impact could be with these radiation exposures. And again, preparing us just to be even more better prepared for future missions to protect our astronauts from that significantly higher amounts of radiation exposure, as well as the types of radiation that they're exposing. Even the lunar surface itself has significantly higher levels of radiation than, let's say, the ISS or even on Earth.
I can imagine being, early on in the space program and being like, wait, what does a vacuum do to a human body? And then you realize, wait, there's a Van Allen belt with a bunch of radiation, and wait, what's going to happen if we're up there? It seems so overwhelming. And yet, I do want to ask, compared to what we humans encounter when it comes to CT scans or going to the dentist, how much radiation did they get exposed to with all the shielding in comparison to what we see on a normal day here on Earth?
Well, in terms of generally, it is way more higher. Obviously, the shieldings their protective suits and the aspects is protecting them. So we still have to, they are now measuring that data and they were collecting data. So once we now start analyzing it, we could get a better idea of the exposure. But even if we look at, let's say, deep space radiation, a couple of days worth of exposure in deep space could give you even over a year's worth of exposure on Earth. Even if you look at numbers on Mars, it's said to be close to 400 times. On the Moon, it could be even up to 2,000 times, depending on locations as well. So significantly high numbers of radiation to be concerned about.
A lot to monitor for here. Tom, if you're watching the same feed that I am, and we've got multiple pictures up, but there seems to be a large wake. And we're seeing, I don't know if it's that front porch that's drifting away, making its way possibly to a place where it would be safe for the helicopters to approach. But do you know what that wake was from?
Boy, you know, buddy, I'm watching with you, and I'm just, I think your observation is correct. They don't want to get, they don't want to drop a line too close to the spaceship itself, for the potential of any, damage or whatever. That's my assumption, that they're just kind of putting some distance between themselves and the ship. You were talking about radiation in space, and when I was in Houston at Johnson Space Center, I was asking around about that. And interestingly, we just had a solar flare here a couple of weeks ago, and it turned out it was not a big deal, nothing to worry about. However, in the last year of the Apollo mission, and the last year that we were landing astronauts on the moon, between missions there was an intense solar flare that hit the moon. And the talk was, had astronauts been on the moon, they would have been killed. And the soil itself was cooked in radiation, and just stepping in the soil back then could have killed them. So the radiation risk is very significant if we're going to have a human presence there longer term. And I know that's a high priority for NASA to mitigate those risks.
Yeah, the millions and millions of things that can kill a human in space. It is pretty wild to think of. And it makes you think of how protective Earth is. I mean, we've got this force field, this magnetic force field that allows us to have this atmosphere, that allows us to have the perfect amount of pressure on our bodies so that everything works the way we take for granted. Stephen, do all those things come into focus after a trip like this?
They do. We try to duplicate as much of that as we can inside the spaceship, right? We try to have the certainly the pressure and the correct kind of air that you need, but really the radiation is a worry, and there's a mystery to it too, because we know something about what happens to people under high doses of radiation through all the science and medicine that we've developed over the last 100 years. What we don't know so much about is, what does chronic, long-term low-dose radiation do to your body, do to your brain, to your cognitive abilities? That is something that somebody on a trip to Mars would get that, a 3-year trip to Mars and back. And so this is one of the speed bumps, the roadblocks, I'd say, in doing something like that. Missions like this build us the capabilities to start understanding those issues so that we can really think about permanent presence.
They sure do. And one of the things that the rabbit holes that I've fallen so deeply into when it comes to space, when it comes to the moon, and when it comes to radiation, is the promise of helium-3 up there, which is possibly a lot more abundant than it is here on Earth. And helium-3, as I understand it, you create a nuclear reaction with something like deuterium, and you don't have the radiation fallout that we associate with, like, uranium. All of a sudden, things become clean. Oh, wow, look at this helicopter coming in hot. We'll pause on this conversation, because what we're about to see here is something we'll never forget.
Now,
let's listen in here.
Another fun aviation adventure.
Gilbert, Seaman, von Braun, Mueller, what they really, really wanted to do, as they were contemplating what it meant to expand our range of action to the lunar surface, what they wanted to do was learn how to live and work in space for a long time. they wanted to do that first before they were confident they could expand their range of action to the moon. Now, of course, the politics of the time and the mission at the time was different, and so they had to go straight to the moon and bring people home. And then after that, the program kind of lost its momentum. But after that, NASA kept moving along those paths, right? So we recognized during Apollo that reusability was going to be important. We spent a lot of money on those machines, and we spent a lot of money on these machines here. Even though, but we recognized that reusability was important, which is why we built a winged space plane called Space Shuttle, and then we used that reusable machine to build a space station. And we learned for 25 years how to live and work in space, and have been able to develop technologies that can enable exploration. So really, what I think is now, 53 years later, we're at the point where the architects of Apollo would have been pleased that we're now ready to actually go back to the moon and go back to stay, because we've learned all the things we needed to learn.
There's a lot of people pleased here tonight, and we really thank you for joining us. Amit Kshatriya, NASA's Associate Administrator, as we begin to hoist the crew onto the helicopters to head back to the recovery ship. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Amit.
We're having a fun day.
What an incredible sight. Lifted once again into the air. Wow. Do you remember seeing an image like this?
No. They had to go all the way to the moon to get this fun ride.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what an epic, epic end.
Beginning to be hoisted aboard the Navy helicopters. Let's go to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha, who will take it from here.
Fabulous.
Hey Rob, yeah, back on the bow of the ship here, we are seeing the helicopters circling Orion. The first one there, having just completed picking up the first astronaut. Hilo 2 now, hovering just 40 feet above the front porch, lowering a recovery specialist out of the helicopter. That person will touch down in the front porch just there. The crew members already outfitted with a harness that will allow them to quickly attach to the hoisting device. Look at the power of those blades throwing water out at the center there. The front porch, with now 3 astronauts and the recovery specialists. Again, crews already outfitted with a harness vest. And here we go. Second astronaut now off the front porch, getting hoisted into the second helicopter.
That's some good flying.
Yeah.
That helicopter will now hover just a distance away to give room for the first helicopter to come back and pick up the third astronaut. As we wait for that helicopter to come back.
That is quite some flying. And Stephen, you got to remember, just like all these astronauts, that's all. Those are aviators. Those are all aviators.
Well, we had Wendy Lawrence on earlier, who was a former crewmate of mine, and she was a helicopter test pilot.
On this history-making moment tonight.
Yeah, nothing more aerodynamic than a helicopter.
Helicopter 1 again hovering 40 feet over the front porch. We will soon see another recovery specialist getting lowered onto the front porch.
I imagine right now everybody's getting a good face full of water with that motor wash.
Yeah, pretty windy.
A helicopter flight back to the ship here would be safer, faster, and more comfortable for our crew who just completed a 10-day mission around the moon. Third astronaut in the air, getting hoisted quickly back into the first helicopter now. its way back to the ship here. We will soon see it land in just a few minutes. Again, all this action happening just 3,000 yards away from us, so a very quick flight back to the flight deck.
And Michio, if we still have you, Michio Kaku, as you're watching this,
Yes.
you're watching this very
I'm watching
heroic
this.
airlift of these astronauts using yet another piece of a modern marvel that is the helicopter. What's going through your mind?
Well, I think technology has made all of this possible. And you realize that back in the 1960s, when we first went to the moon, think of how primitive television was back then. Think of how primitive the original rockets were compared to what we have today. We have the internet, we have telecommunications, we have all sorts of wonders of technology that give us instantaneous news about what's happening. And so back in those days, when the astronauts came back from the moon, we didn't get a story about that for days. Now it's instantaneous. And I think that's one of the benefits of modern technology. It brings the universe to our doorstep. And we begin to really feel the fact that we're part of this great universe of